Well, gentlemen, our guest looks like she has called in right now, and it's good to welcome back Gay Culverhouse. She is the Director Emeritus of the Gay Culverhouse Players Outreach Program, of course, also former president of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And Dr. Culverhouse, Doug Miles, Don Henderson, and the G-Man, thanks for joining us tonight. How are you?
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, I'd just like to say one thing at the outset. We had you on with us about a year plus ago, and I would have to say that in the last year and a half or two, you must be very pleased because a lot has happened in the concussion business in the National Football League in the last 18 months.
Well, it has. There's no doubt about that. We've certainly raised awareness, I think, not just in football, but in hockey and children's sports, and I think people are getting the word.
We were just talking, Dr. Culverhouse, about some of the hits just this past weekend we saw with Jay Cutler of the Bears and R.G. Griffin with the knee, and all season long it seems like it's every year it's getting worse. The players are bigger than even they were 5-10 years ago. And I guess they're talking now about trying to change some of the rules, maybe eliminating the kickoff and all that. How do you see the situation right now?
Well, if you look at it from the 11 season on, because the congressional hearings were in October of 10, Richie McKay and the competition committee have each year tried to make the rules safer for the players. And what's interesting is the fans are the ones that complain. The fans want the I don't want to say they want injuries, but they want excitement, for lack of a better word, on the field. Sort of like when you go to NASCAR, you don't go to watch 500 miles. You go to watch the accident. And people, people go for hockey for the blood on the ice. That's why Derek Burgard comes in as the enforcer. So I think we have to understand human nature, and human nature enjoys the violence of football. So every time they make it safer, the fans complain. And I think we have to look at ourselves and wonder why that is.
But I think, Doctor, they've also expanded the research because now they're talking about the younger players. I'm talking now the Pee Wee leagues and the junior high school level, maybe not being able to have contact until after they've gotten through the 8th grade, that the Little League procedures that they've had, like they have in baseball, that a lot of the injuries are happening even when they're that young.
That's correct. My grandson's been playing football since he was 7. And it's interesting because they supposedly weigh these players, and if they're over a certain weight, they're called red stripers at that point. But it's interesting because a lot of the teams aren't weighing the players, and they're bringing these humongous players out that are decimating the little kids. And a lot of injuries are occurring because of this. So the coaches have this win-at-all-costs mentality. And in Mobile, the Toy Bowl, played right before Thanksgiving, is the highlight of the season for just about all parents.
And I think the other thing that you could look at is the fact that more and more ex-football players are coming out saying that they would let their youngsters play football.
That's correct. I've read quite a few of those remarks, and I don't know if you're aware of the study that came out beginning of last week in the journal Brain that was done by Boston University, Ann McKee and Chris Nowinski and Bob Cantu. But in that study of 85 people who'd received repeated hits to the head, majority were athletes or veterans, 17 of those brains were high school students.
Wow.
And 6 of them were college students, and the remainder, of course, were, older people. But but there were 85 people in the study, and 80% of them on autopsy showed to have chronic traumatic encephalopathy. And so you had 17 high school students who, to your point, obviously had had a series of head injuries starting from their peewee days.
Right. Doug?
I was going to say, in the last year, obviously this tragic situation with Junior Seau, who took his own life, and before that, Dave Dewerson, and even what happened last week, we don't know yet if it was related to head injury, but the whole Jovan Belcher thing, speculation that there may have been some connection. We're seeing, unfortunately, more of these situations, Doctor, and you mentioned going back to high school kids now, repeated hits to the head. You wonder if there is even going to be football on that level down the road with that. I don't know if that'll ever eliminate it, but it's
I'll tell
changing
you,
times.
In the great states of Alabama and Texas, I doubt that it'll ever be eliminated. Lamar Smith went after me at the congressional hearing. He's the ranking member, Republican member of that judicial committee. And he said, "What are you trying to do, turn the NFL into flag football?" I mean, he was quite upset with me. So I really don't believe we'll ever totally change the culture. I would like to see, obviously, the younger brains more protected, but helmets aren't the answer, and not playing isn't the answer. It's just a way to find some kind of magic bullet that we can protect these brains, and not every brain that is damaged ends up being permanently damaged, because if you rest it, if you take precautions after the hit, your brain will heal.
Well, I think that's one of the things that they really have in the last year, maybe year and a half. We spoke, as I said, with you about 18 months ago, and I think that's one of the things that they have really, whether it's because of the lawsuit, whether it's become the pressure of your organization or exactly what, but you don't see these people coming back following head injuries and concussions in the National Football League like they did, during my time. I mean, they sit out 1 or 2 days, and that was about it. But now you're seeing as many as 2 to 3 weeks.
Well, it's like they used to just hit themselves in the head, call it a ding, and go back in for the next play, even though they were vomiting in the huddle.
Right.
You didn't take a break. I mean, you weren't a wuss. I mean, we had guys walking to the other huddle. They were so confused. And a player would run, go get them, and bring them back. I mean, nobody ever thought to sit them on the bench and rest them. But now you look at Michael Vick, and that's one tough player. I mean, he's no wuss, and he's been out for how long?
3 weeks.
Yeah. And he's not a baby.
No, and they even said Andy Reid said last week that he was making a change in quarterback for the remainder of the season, not just because of the fact that the young quarterback had made giant strides forward, but the fact that even after 3 weeks he did not feel that Vic was 100%.
Yes. Yes. And that's happening across the league. I mean, I've got to give them credit for, putting these guys on the bench and giving them the time they need, because you can come back. It's not a death sentence. A concussion does not mean you're going to be demented if it's taken care of properly.
Gina, do you have a question?
No, I'm trying to absorb all of this quite a bit. Contact sports, I don't think there is a magic, I'll use her words, bullet in this particular case. I've watched great players like Harbaugh for the Chicago Bears over the years. And, I've watched contact sports, played contact sports. Well, I guess you wouldn't call tennis a contact sport. But anyway, and I'm just being funny there. But and I've been in shooting sports all my life. So, and I didn't recently have until recently. I have had concussions, and I cannot shoot a 12 gauge anymore because of that. all of a sudden concussions begin to surface now. Now the information is coming out. And, and I'm an old fart, so sitting around, and it didn't, I don't remember concussions coming up in the day in my time.
No.
Until just recently. And my degrees are all in psych and social, so I've been around a lot of these guys that have had psych issues, but the concussions are now surfacing. And I don't think, and I agree with you, there is a magic way to resolve these sports, young and old, where we're going to tackle people, we're going to hit people. It's going to be very difficult to resolve, and I don't think flag football, and I understand where that congressman is coming from, but at the same time, what can we do? What can we do logically to resolve?
Gee, man, look at the number of people over the last, I'll just say 25 years, because I go back to Willie Pep and boxers like that. But, I mean, you're talking about the sport that they've been trying to outlaw for 25 years. They're saying, what is boxing except trying to give somebody a concussion? That's what it is.
Well, both players Saturday night suffered concussions.
Oh, absolutely.
And Packy was the only one that was taken to the hospital for an MRI.
Well, he went down flat on his face, though.
Yes, but he
couldn't even get up.
No, he was down for the count. But the other guy, along with his broken nose, also suffered a concussion.
Right.
And
well, I mean, and as I say, you go back to whatever time you want, go back to the 40s and 50s, and you talk about the punch-drunk fighters. Well, the punch-drunk fighters are fighters that had stayed in the ring for a long period of time and took a shellacking.
That's right.
Well,
that's right.
Look at Ali. Look at his condition. Yep. Yeah, and I watched that fight, by the way, later, and that was one of the best 5 rounds that I think I've watched in years. And he took a tremendous blow on that right hook. Without a doubt, that was a tough hit. But that's
his signature hit. That's the guy's signature move. Is that right? I am a big boxing fan.
Well, I have been for a long period of time, but unfortunately now I am not a boxing fan anymore. Not because of the hazards of the sport, but because to me it's no longer legitimized. It's they create fake championships. I mean, when I was growing up, you could tell who the champion was in every single division, whether you were lightweight, middleweight, whatever it was, and you knew the top 8 or 10 fighters in that ranking. But now you have no idea what kind of a championship it is, or whether it's any kind of a championship.
Well, this one was an unbelted nothing, but except for the 4th rematch, and now Bob Arum's talking about bringing it around for a 5th.
Well, Bob Arum, not one of my favorite people.
No, he was celebrating his 81st birthday that day. I watched an interview, and I'm wondering how many hits he had on the head, personally. Between you and me.
Dr. Culverhouse, just to kind of get back to a little bit about what your program does, and we heard so many players now that are having trouble getting insurance or dealing with so many health issues, not only concussions but just being able to walk. Can you talk a little bit about not only what your program does, but how big a problem this is?
Well, what we do essentially is we help the players. And it basically boils down to their family members. Family members are the first to notice that you're not acting, quote-unquote, right, that there's something wrong going on. And then we guide them through the process of getting the physicals, the medical paperwork, the whatever legal standing they may have with the league. We let them know what their rights are, and then we shepherd it through the league offices, act as an ombudsman, for lack of a better word, to make sure that the player gets what he's entitled to. And then we also do a lot of, for lack of a better word, damage control or intervention. For example, in Tampa, there was a football player walking down the middle of the street, and the police picked him up. They called us, and we intervened, got his parents involved, got him an attorney, and helped sort out what ended up being a mental condition. He was on the Buccaneers. So we do a lot of things that we don't talk about publicly in terms of helping players in legal situations. I helped one player out of a foreclosure. But basically, our mission is to help players, retired players, get the benefits to which they're entitled through the NFL.
John?
Well, I just, I've been following the programs pretty closely, and I think it's one of the most serious things in sport right now when you look at it, because every coach wants to win, and as every coach says on Monday when they have the press conference, this is a winning business. This is not, you're not here to be competitive. You're not here to be a nice guy. If you don't win, you don't have a job. It's as simple as that.
That's the bottom line.
That's the bottom line.
And the other bottom line is, with winning comes ticket sales.
Correct.
Money talks. If you aren't making money for the owner, you're going to find yourself looking somewhere else.
That's right. And the only way you can make money for the owner other than the television contracts is the fact that you're winning, because people don't follow losing teams. And the Buccaneers are a perfect example. I mean, they've gone through, it's not that long ago that they had the Super Bowl, as you well know.
Right.
And then they went through, 4 or 5 of the leanest years you could ever have.
Yes, absolutely. And when you look at the television contract, everyone gets 1/32 of that contract.
Right.
So they all start out pretty much at the same level. And then it's a matter of how many skybox seats and club seats you can sell.
And personal lighting, license seating, too.
Yes, that's it. And that's why there's so many stadiums, recently built or getting ready to be built, say for Oakland. Oakland's being promised a new stadium if they'll stay, because they don't have the capacity to sell those club seats and special licensing seats.
Right.
I mean, there was a time in Buccaneer history we made more money going to play in the Chicago Bears Soldier Field than we made if we hosted the Bears at our place.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, the problem is, if you are a visiting team, you get 40% of the take off the top. If you are the home team, you pay all expenses. Security, whatever personnel, whatever it takes to put on that game, you pay for it.
Right.
So it's better to take 40% of an away game than 60% of a home game if you aren't going to sell it out.
And right now they've got a number of teams that aren't even close to selling out. I mean, it's really...
the Jaguars are one of the saddest examples.
Well, Oakland the other day, that was almost empty out there.
Yes. Yes, and it's like Kansas, too. You've got to win to draw the fans.
That's right. And the coach has to win in order to keep his job.
That's it. And unless you're a quarterback like Sanchez with a guaranteed salary for next year, you better throw some really good passes that end up in touchdowns.
He's taking the heat, though. We watched some of the post-game on the SNY channel, and he takes the heat every week, Sanchez, but he knows he's got the $8 million coming, so he puts up with it.
He's got $8 million guaranteed for next year. He can turn right and pass the ball and turn left and pass off the ball. He doesn't need to throw another ball as long as he lives.
Yeah, you're right there.
He just needs to invest that $8 million really well.
Yeah, nice that you should say that, because unfortunately, That's the next thing. Well, of course, the National Football League doesn't have any control over individuals, but I mean, these players are getting all this money. In fact, ESPN just did a big feature this weekend on how many people, like Warren Sapp, that made more money than he could ever use and is broke.
Well, Junior Seau died financially bankrupt.
Right.
Alcohol and drug addicted. You know, I mean, it's just a very, very sad situation. But did they take an economics or an accounting course in college? No. And the league, at one point, when I was with the Buccaneers, the league mandated a financial planning course. It was a 6-week course. It was Monday afternoons, nothing going on. We served refreshments, you know, and it was a 6-week, every Monday course on financial planning and investment. Only 2 people showed up, 2 wives of 2 coaches.
It's
no
a shame.
Player.
No.
You've got, 45, 50 men back there, no coaches, no players' wives, girlfriends, moms, aunts, nothing.
Yeah, it's a shame. They really don't have the capacity for whatever the reason to understand that.
No.
And I realize that, a lot of them come from an area where they've never had any money. They've, scraped and scrounged their whole lives to get at the competitive edge. But as Charles Barkley said on the piece on ESPN, he lost $6 million, and this is what a lot of them do. He lost $6 million gambling alone.
Well, did you see when the Super Bowl was in Tampa and Michael Jordan walked in and lost $2 million the first night at blackjack and came back the next night and lost $3 million?
Yeah, right.
I mean, what are you thinking?
I have no idea. I just it doesn't make any sense to me. You strive to make all this money, and I know the competitive juices, and you want to be. But the jewelry, the watches, the gambling, the narcotics. I mean, it's just a shame. It really is.
It is. And then Uncle Sam, nobody really thinks about him taking 55% off the top.
Right.
But
yeah, well, they don't even realize when they sign a $20 million contract, that $20 million contract, forget the guarantees. Even if they make it to the end of the contract, is really only 18-point-something million dollars.
Yeah, and then you got to give 10 to 15% to your agent.
Right.
So when you get down to it, and the average lifespan of a player in the NFL, the average playing time is 4 years.
Yeah.
For a linebacker, it's 2.7 years. You aren't even vested with the NFL. But you have that amount of time to make all the money you're going to make ostensibly for the rest of your life because you probably didn't graduate from college with a degree you can use.
Right. And the other thing is, and you were involved, obviously, when the lockouts were going on, that
yes.
The players who are making all this money, most of them don't even realize you're only going to get paid 6 months. The second 6 months, they had no money left by the time they got to the end of it.
We had first-round draft choices coming in and borrowing money on Thursday because he wouldn't get paid again until Monday, and he had gone through all of that money in the first 5 days of the week.
Wow. Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
And I used to sit there and look at him like, what the hell could you have done? I mean, I know food's expensive, but we fed them breakfast and lunch because their eating habits were so bad. They didn't know anything about nutrition, so we hired a dietitian who served breakfast and lunch so that we made sure the players got at least 2 well-balanced meals a day.
Yeah. It's not as easy as everybody thinks it is, either for the players or for the owners or for the officials or anybody associated with it. It is a tough, tough business. And, of course, television has been the salvation for most everybody.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, Doctor, I know we kept going longer than we said, but it's a fascinating and important topic. Give out a website, Doctor, if you would. People get more information about your program. You're doing great work there.
It's playersoutreach.com.
That's easy enough. And Dr. Gay Culverhouse has been our guest, and we want to talk about what happened at Raymond James yesterday, Doctor.
No, let's not.
Are you still teaching, Doctor? What do you do?
I wrote a book on concussions, the NFL and Pee Wee football, and now I do a lot of lecturing on concussions.
Okay, I didn't know whether you were still teaching.
My grandson plays football.
Well, you can't beat that. That's as good as it gets.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, I just remind them to rest.
Well, thank you very, very much for joining us again. It was a real pleasure to join you.
Oh, it was my pleasure, believe me. Thank you.